Hi there, how are you? I recently got a question from one of the readers of my book about how to open a ice cream shop or an ice cream store or like a frozen yogurt kind of a store, and so I'm going to make a video about it. Here it is. If you didn't know, there's actually such a thing as National Ice Cream Sellers Retailers Association. And if there's something for, if there's an association for that, then I guess there's an association for everything, right? Because that seems a little bit obscure, but there's such a thing, and you should certainly go there and check it out, and at least check out their website, see what kind of benefits you can get from it. Now, here's how to actually go about opening this sort of a business. The first thing you need is to figure out the costs, and the costs can be, as low as a few tens of thousands of dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars. It really depends on the kind of ice cream store you want to open. So, for example, what you can do is decide, maybe, are you going to go for a franchise or are you going to go for your own concept, right? Because if you go for a franchise, you get their marketing, you get a lot of their business finance know-how, you get a lot of their branding, recognition, and things like that. For franchises, there are franchise fees that you have to pay them up front. So that's kind of a problem. It's not the most pleasant thing. But once you do that, certainly you get a lot of benefits from them. The problem is many people feel like it's not really their own, and also some people want to experiment with their own ice cream flavors and things like that. So there's a lot of things that are you get a little bit restricted. But the good news is the funds that you have to raise is not that much, or it's not as much as maybe if it was completely your own, because then you'd have to do much more marketing and much more brand recognition, things like that. So that's something to consider. Also, when you're choosing a space, almost regardless of whether you're doing a franchise or your own concept for a store, for an ice cream store shop, what you want to figure out is, are you going to take over an existing business that you can buy out, or are you going to start from absolute scratch and remodel? Because if you start from absolute scratch, you're going to have to buy a ton of equipment. If you take over an existing space, they'll have everything ready for you, right? All the counters, all the machines, and there's a lot of machines and a lot of little tools and a lot of little things that you have to buy, and especially, it has to do with refrigeration and ice, all sorts of things. So taking over an existing space can be very good because all the remodeling, or just about most of the remodeling, is done for you. The problem might be is, why are people selling this business to you, right? Because if you're buying a business, that means they want to get out of that business. So you have to maybe really strongly consider why that person is trying to get out and why they're happy to sell to you, right? Is it not all that it's cracked up to be? That's sometimes the case, because like an ice cream store seems like a really fun business, but it's hard work and it's stressful, and it has its challenges, right? Because you have all the costs, employees, this and that, and the margins aren't, whatever. Like, the people don't spend a lot of money in your store, and some of, when it rains, when it's snowy, when it's bad weather. Actually, well, we'll get into it, because people still consume ice cream during bad weather. It's just in a different way. But anyway, that's more about the kind of target consumer you're targeting. So we'll get into that in a little bit. So, okay, let's get in. So now we're talking about the cost. Taking over an existing space or remodeling your own. If money is an issue for you, which it is for almost everyone, you want to consider taking over an existing space. That's the first thing you want to consider. And remodeling and rebuilding your own kind of space is maybe last resort, because it's certainly going to be more costly. Because even if you want to create your own concept, you can still remodel a little bit from the existing space, but you'll have all the existing machines in there and tools and counters and things like that. The layout maybe is going to be mostly how you will need it. Okay, so that's now, how do you raise the money, right? This is not an easy business to raise money for, because it's very hard to get an investment for this. Many people dip into their savings. In addition to the savings, they might take a small business loan, or if they can't get a business loan, it is hard to get a business loan before you started. what people can do is take a personal loan and put that money towards their business, which is very, very risky. Not really recommended, but it's one of the options. It's not it's not a great option, but whatever, it's one of the options. Um, and then sometimes family and friends help. Sometimes one thing you can do is, if you really can't raise the money, because many people, they really run into this challenge where they can't raise the money that they need. What you can do is start maybe from an ice cream truck, because even when you open your ice cream store, you don't have to lose the truck, right? You just have to get a person to work in there, and that both the truck and both the store can sort of brand each other. Like the truck can be everywhere in the city and giving you recognition, giving you brand recognition, giving you like especially people love the truck, and it becomes like a known entity. Then it will actually funnel some people to your store eventually as well. But the truck is sometimes a good way to start because it's so much cheaper. You don't have to pay rent. Um, you know, there's pros and cons, but it's certainly cheaper to start, and it can kind of get you going, and maybe even get you some experience in the business, and actually see if you're into that business long term before really getting a full restaurant, like an ice cream store, ice cream shop, right? Because that's a big commitment, and the truck is a much smaller commitment. And then as you run the truck, you can, if you're able to make a profit, you can save up to your ice cream store. Now, the location is extremely sensitive because depending on your neighborhood, obviously your rent costs will vary quite a bit, right? If you're in an affluent neighborhood, you're going to want to target families and kids and things like that. Maybe, if you're, in different neighborhoods, you want to really see who you want, see the kind of person. I think the way really to think about it, one of the good ways is try to think about the concept that you have in mind for your store, for your ice cream shop, and then see who the best type of customer is for that kind of a store. And then you can choose the neighborhood accordingly, where most of those people hang out. Is it going to be something like people are going to, is it going to be people coming to celebrate? Is it going to be people coming with kids? Is it going to be like birthday parties? Or is it maybe more of an adult kind of thing? And maybe, adults also eat a lot of ice cream, especially during bad weather. Actually, I don't have the exact statistics of this, but people eat a lot of ice cream when it's cold outside, and people snuggle up and they watch TV and they get warm and cozy and they have some ice cream. So ice cream consumption doesn't go completely down during winter. That's a little bit of a myth. But the location really depends on the kind of target people you want to target, and also the affluence level and what they're going to be able to spend, because you're going to have different kinds of rent for different kinds of location, and you're going to have to be able to sell enough ice cream to cover your costs and then turn some profit. So you have to do those calculations to tell which neighborhoods might be profitable. That's really kind of how you determine that. And also, of course, you don't want to have a lot of competition in your neighborhood. One thing that's really great if you can pull this off is, there's this in recent years, there's been this differentiation between just being a store, just having a business, or having an experience, right? Because especially since a lot of businesses and ice cream stores aren't really susceptible to this, but in general, like brick and mortar businesses are very susceptible they're very susceptible to losing customers to the online world, right? It's not as bad in the ice cream world because, for obvious reasons, but still, in recent years, there's been this kind of a strong trend in really focusing on having your either store or ice cream shop, whatever, become more of an experience. So it's not like a really fun place, amazing decor, maybe there's extra games, maybe there's parties, maybe there's like something going on, right? So that it's more than just eating the ice cream, right? So the ice cream is not as much the attraction as maybe the way you serve the ice cream is like really beautiful, or maybe you're like something, right? Or maybe you kind of get publicity, you do something outrageous, get some publicity locally, get known locally. So you're more of an entity than just ice cream, right? So if you can do that, It builds up your brand, it builds up your recognition, and there's more reasons to come to your place than just for ice cream. So it all results in getting more customers, which is what you want. So that's something that you're going to have to think about long term, is how do you make this a destination? How do you make it an experience rather than just ice cream? The other thing people always ask about is, limited liability protection. How do, what kind of entity should I, like business, what kind of business entity should I register my business as? And, people ask a lot about what kind of licenses do I need, what kind of permits. So I'm not a lawyer, but the way you figure this out, so for your licenses and permits, you figure this out, you call your Secretary of State office for your state, and they'll literally tell you. You also call the city hall, they'll also tell you what the city requires. That way you understand what your state requires, and you understand what your city requires. You can also call your county office and ask what your county requires. And for ice cream, there's all these kinds of like extra things with having to do with health and food and safety inspections and things like that. Depending on your area, some areas have a lot of these permits that are required and licenses, some don't. Regarding your business entity, things like should you be an LLC, an S corp, a C corp, something else, that I would recommend consulting with an accountant or a lawyer. Accountants are usually pretty good at understanding this as well, especially accountants who help people with business, not just any accountant. And they are going to be able to kind of set you up with all the right information, and they'll sort of help you decide what kind of a business entity is right for you. And so there you have it. Like, this is essentially, these are all the things that you should consider when you're starting a like ice cream store or frozen yogurt shop. I mean, these are the essentials. That's all the things to start. I mean, it's far easier to say what to do than to do it, because sometimes this takes months, right? Finding a place, raising the money, getting the licenses, finding distributors. I mean, yeah, like finding distributors, because you're gonna have to buy the ice cream. If you franchise, that's one thing. They'll tell you where to get it. But if you don't franchise, then oh my God, like where do you buy the ice cream, right? You gotta get the wholesalers to sell the ice cream. It's like, so every piece of it is gonna be time consuming, and you're not gonna get it right from the first time. Also, you're gonna have to have employees, contracts. That means you have to have the lawyers. So there's a lot of things in there. Last thing I want to leave you with is, I didn't really focus on it enough, maybe, the fundraising, right? So to really understand how much money you need to raise, there's a thing, it's called cash flow statement. Basically, you itemize all your cash flow and you itemize all your expenses in there, right? Before you start. So all the machines you need to do, all the remodeling, the rent, the employee hiring, the lawyers, and also there is going to be cash flow out when you start the business. And what you want to do is you want to give yourself runway, at least 6 to 12 months at least, so that you're able to sort of establish a name in your neighborhood, start getting clients, things like that, and become at least break even financially. So once you do that, you should be, once if you give yourself enough runway, you should sort of maybe break even financially, and then slowly turn a profit and ultimately have a good profitable business.